I wasn't planning to explore casino gambling right now, but since you both have raised it, John, what is your position on casino gambling?
I am for casino gambling. I would support first a resort-style casino more centrally located. I'm a little cautious to go into that with 3 resort-style casinos. I think it's a bit too much for the state to take on. I don't think we have enough to support that. I think really, when we're talking taxes, we've got to look at wasteful spending. We've got to have good economic development. You know, when we look at Evergreen Solar, that the state gave $21 million to create jobs and move to our state, and then they left. And they left us, and we got nothing back. We got $3 million back out of that. And that's the stuff, like the wasteful spending that we can't have. We can't keep taxing people, but we've got to figure out a way to close this gap in this budget because it's real, and we all know at the municipal level, Gary and Ellen, we're all dealing with rising health care costs, and the municipalities, you know, need to really work together with our unions to try to close these gaps. One thing in Watertown is we were able to join the GIC. Myself and members of our town council in Watertown gave a direct message to our manager to work with our unions to join the GIC, and we were successful at that, and that was a big important savings for our town. And the numbers just came out on the GIC that the healthcare costs have only gone up 2.4%, and that's a huge savings. Still, we're in big trouble. But for all these towns that are not in the GIC, it's very difficult. Healthcare costs are still going up 10%.
Okay, we'll come back to that GIC, but I just want to finish up on casino gambling. The last time it came before the legislature, the stumbling point was on so-called racinos, slot machines at the racetracks, and the whole discussion broke down. I'd like to hear from each one of you what your position is on that. Gary.
Well, I'd like to comment on the gambling in particular. Being a bankruptcy attorney in Waltham, I've seen my fair share of addiction come through my office, gambling addiction included, alcohol. It ruins families. That's my perspective as a practicing attorney in Waltham, family attorney. That's where my hesitation and reservation comes in supporting a gambling bill, any gambling bill, casino gambling or otherwise. I understand back, you know, a couple of years ago when Governor Patrick proposed the gambling bill, really the sticking point was the racinos, just what you're talking about, the slots in the racetracks. Governor Patrick wanted none. Others wanted to have them in the 2 former dog tracks and in the horse tracks. One problem with doing that is that we're almost going to cannibalize, if we do have casino gambling or slots, we're going to cannibalize the business within the Commonwealth. John said, I think John said, or Jay said, one casino-style gambling. That would be the most that I would ever approve, and I wouldn't approve racinos.
Do you have a position on the racinos?
The racinos, I do have mixed feelings on it. On one hand, I thought that there was a time that it may have been able to save the racetracks with the jobs in. I know just in Revere alone there was over 70 kennels that did lose jobs, and the dogs were moved to other tracks. On that hand, I was looking at it trying to look at it as a positive note. Well, maybe we can still keep these people employed. But on the other hand, I looked at the other side of it too, and I said to myself, I said, well, this is taking away from the money being generated for the dogs itself. That's going into the slot machine part of it. And I was trying to weigh out the two of them. And to be honest with you, I finally came down to the decision that I wasn't in favor of it. Well,
the governor's objection was that if you automatically put slots in the racetracks, that amounted to a no-bid contract, in effect. Does any one of you have any feelings about that in terms of the logic of moving ahead?
I did not comment on the racinos. I am against the racinos, and I think that legislation was coming out of most of the towns that the people that were for it was where they were. So I am against the racinos.
Okay, let's move on. You had mentioned one particular, or somebody had mentioned incentivizing certain economic behavior. Massachusetts instituted tax benefits to incentivize the production of films in the Commonwealth, and certainly we've seen many movies made here over the last several years, and that was a lot of fun, certainly on Oscar night. Do you favor the continuation of the film industry tax incentives? Why don't we start with Gary?
All right. Again, if we're going to be, from what I read today about local aid is monies that come basically from the lottery through the state to our local economies. We receive Chapter 70 funds, which is for our schools. We receive Chapter 90 funds, which is for our roads. And then we receive unrestricted funds, which we can use in our general fund for any purpose. If we're going to receive, we're already receiving less than we received last year. In Waltham, we're 35% down from fiscal year 2008. Now, if that's going to continue and we're not going to be level funded on our on the local aid level, then we can't be giving credits to the film industry while our municipalities suffer from a lack of local aid. I will say the economy and jobs are really priority, and to me, the film industry has benefited mightily from these credits. John brought up Evergreen Solar. Horrible situation. I think we could have corrected Evergreen Solar if, in the credits that we gave them, we conditioned it on a reversionary back to the city, or I'm sorry, to the state, if they had left their city.
Okay, let's hold off on Evergreen Solar for a second and talk about the film industry. Jay, do you have any feeling about that? Is this an efficient way of supporting job creation?
On a temporary basis, sure. I mean, we see the stage crews and what have you working on a temporary basis in Massachusetts with that, but it's not jobs that are here continuously, and that's not the way that we should be doing business. We should be looking for jobs for people long-term, things that they can look forward to, that they can prioritize and put their lives in order, something that they can spend the time and have the opportunity to be able to build on, to be able to buy homes, to have families and that sort of thing. So on a long-term basis, I don't see that happening with the movie industry. I think once the next best thing comes up, they're going to move on. Having the tax incentives in there, it's great for a temporary basis, but it's not there for long-term.
John, somewhere it seems to me I've seen a figure of $1 million spent to create each job. I don't want to be quoted on that, but it seems to me I remember reading that. Are those tax incentives for the film industry the best way to
I'm glad actually this question brought up, because I think from solar, Evergreen Solar, and the film industry, what's happened is that we've given, the state was in such a panic mode to try to create economic development that we gave away far too much for what we're receiving. There was legislation filed recently from a state rep and senator in the Worcester area that would propose to promote efficiency and transparency in economic development. That is something that I would favor. It would require and commit to a certain number of jobs, and it would also require tough and more uniform clawback requirements, so that if they don't follow through, if this economic development does not come through, that they have to give back the money that they've been given. So that's something that I would be in favor of, and I think that's how we've learned from some of these mistakes that were made in the past, that we need to support legislation like this so that we do get this kind of payback from our investment.
Gary, I cut you off in deference to the flashing light when you were talking about the clawback provisions, but do you want to amplify your position on that?
Well, that's exactly, John's right, which is what I was saying. The reversionary clawback would ensure that the municipality or the state, whoever gave it's a tax credit to the business, would get that back if the business had fled in the middle of the night, which is really what happened here with Evergreen Solar. There are other ways to attract business and to keep business in our state. Governor Patrick actually is really in the forefront with bringing and trying to keep jobs in Massachusetts and creating jobs. He's made a couple of mistakes. One of them, I think, is the reduction in the corporate tax rate from 8.75% to 8.25%, which goes into effect this year. That was legislation that was filed. It's a gradual reduction. I just wouldn't be giving tax breaks to corporations without looking at the sales tax, which was increased just a couple of years ago on our taxpayers. But there's other ways to incentivize business and to bring them here and to keep them here. I've got the red light.
Okay, well, we'll go to Jay, and then
That's fine.
we can open it up a little for more informal.
Yeah, thank you.
Your thoughts on this whole incentive area and the clawback provision for evergreen solar?
I agree with what both gentlemen said, that if the community where they're doing their work, that should be the place that would get the returns in every way. They're the ones that are pretty much putting everything out front and holding on to excuse me, and holding on to the things that they need necessary to move them forward. If they're going to get up and move out, they should be the folks that are going to get the returns on it.
But if you're giving, sorry folks, if you're giving a state tax reduction, state revenue lost to an industry or a company, how do you work it out so that if there's a clawback, it doesn't go back to the state? I don't understand how it would go to the cities and towns.
Well, that's where we're gonna have to get a little creative with it. You know, with each city and town that's gonna be putting up the money and the time and the effort in their properties and whatever they seem necessary to get them to move forward. There's got to be an incentive in place for those folks. If they're going to do that, they're going to get more of a return than the state itself. That's my feeling.
John, I know from your bio that you worked for Fidelity. Now, Fidelity was famously given a tax incentive to keep jobs in the Commonwealth. I want to put you on the spot.
Sure.
And
You laid me off, I'm fine.
Well, I want to even.
No, and I don't mean actually, it's a great company. And
How did that work? Did the tax incentive work?
And I
then?
think actually Fidelity Investments has made a huge commitment to this state. And they grew, when I worked at Fidelity Investment, it was growing and growing in the early 90s beyond what they could keep up with. They did move a lot of stuff out of state to regionalize in certain Salt Lake City, Texas, to get more of a presence around the country. But I think Fidelity Investments is a large taxpayer in this community. They did get breaks early on, and that is something that I was, long before I was involved, but you know, they did create a lot of jobs, and they still are one of the largest employers in the state.
Just last point on all of this. Critics maintain that government should not be in the business of picking winners and losers in the private sector. Anyone have an opinion on that?
In what way?
In terms of subsidizing particular companies.
I would just say, yeah, sure. I think it gives the impression that there's preferential treatment for one reason or another, whether that company has somebody on the board that somebody knows. You know, you're right. It should be by industry or by like the film industry or the biotech industry. If we're going to give tax credits or preferential treatment, it should be by industry, not by individual company.
Anyone else have anything to add to that, or we can move along? John, you mentioned the healthcare design and water towns going along with the Group Insurance Commission, the GIC. This is very hot in the news right now, and Governor Patrick came out in favor of allowing municipal leaders to make changes to employee health care plans unilaterally without putting it to a union vote. I would like to know from each of you how you would vote on that proposal. And let's start. I think all right, okay, John, I'll start with you.
I'll start. I believe, let me first be clear, I believe in unions and I believe in collective bargaining. And I believe that we all need to sit down together and work through, like we did in Watertown, together. We need to work through what the actual costs of health care are and what we're up against. And unions were created for fair wages and good working conditions. And what's happened, we don't want this country to turn into what's happening in Wisconsin. We need to work together. But we do not and should not strip union rights away from people without going through collective bargaining.
Gary?
Absolutely agree with that, 100%. There's a stalemate right now going on, and it's been that way for a while at Beacon Hill. The governor is trying to compel state employees and municipalities employees to join the GIC. The GIC is a group insurance commission. It's a, again, quasi-independent state agency that insures a lot of people. It's reasonably cost insurance, but the terms of the insurance are not as good as, say, some of the individual policies that some unions enjoy now in the municipalities. Because of the savings, it's an important budget item for Governor Patrick to force not just, well, actually, to all the state employees are going to be on it by next month, from what I understand. But to compel the municipal union workers to join, so that the municipalities can have these great savings. It's the problem. Absolutely, collective bargaining has to work, has to make has to be involved. The unions have to have a say at the bargaining table. One thing I want to just say, that one of the debates is really what happens to the savings. Does it go back to the that first year? Oh, go ahead. Thank you. That'd be red light.
Jay, what's your position on that?
My feeling is, being in a union right now myself, as well as being on the E-board, there was times where I was involved with bargaining contracts, and it's fine to make changes, but if you're under a bargained agreement between both parties, I believe that should be upheld. If there's going to be changes done, it shouldn't be done in the middle of the game. It should be done at a time when it's time to re-bargain again. You can sit down and talk with both sides on the table.
All right, now, the other day, well, this is on the same subject.
Sure.
The public workers unions have suggested that they be given half the seats on the Group Insurance Commission, and that half of any savings achieved by joining the GIC be returned to the workers. I will say that of the seats on the commission now, and they already have 4 seats. But I wonder to what extent each one of you agrees with that proposal, or how you would amend it.
Well, I'd first like to say, go first?
Sure.
Okay. I would first like to say that we have 4 union members on the board, and just to comment a little bit on Gary's about where the cost savings go and what's happened in the last 10 years to all these municipalities is, we did join the GIC in Watertown, and yes, there was a cost savings, but what it really was, and what we talk about, is a cost avoidance, and it's about preserving jobs, and about being able to use that money to keep people working, and that's what's happening. It's not cash in the town's pocket. It's cash that we can be able to keep services going, and keep people working, and keep teachers in the classroom, and keep police and fire in the street. That's what we need to do. And those savings are real in that way, and that's what we need to do.
Gary?
Yes. Before I was cut off.
But I do let you get back there.
What I was trying to say was the union's position right now, the one that they announced 2 days ago, is that any cost savings in the first year of entering the GIC would be divided equally between the union members, the insureds, and the state. So that's their position. They, I'm not sure I necessarily agree with it. However, there has to be incentive to bring the union's employees, the municipal employees, to the GIC. In some cases, like in Waltham, Waltham enjoys a Blue Cross Blue Shield and Tufts plan. We had a problem with the collective bargaining issue when it was brought up to us a couple of years ago by the mayor, because as you probably know, the coalition bargaining, which requires a 70% vote and brings all the unions into the mix, didn't protect the retirees in Waltham, and we have a special act in Waltham that protects our retirees and their premiums. So that was a bit of an issue for us, and the coalition bargaining didn't pass. That was 2 years ago for us. I know that Watertown went to the GIC. I understand their premiums increased quite a bit. The first year, this year, John's right, it's 2.4% increase, which is amazing. Thank you.
Jay, do you have any thoughts on that union alternative proposal?
I mean, anything could be on the table, but I'm going to stress that once you're under an agreement and an agreement's been made, I think that both sides should uphold what they agreed with. And then, like I said, after the time has expired and they go back to the bargaining table, then they can talk about it.
This is one we could probably speak for the whole rest of the forum on, but Charlie, do you have any questions from the audience?
I have several questions that are starting to build up here, and if you could just state your name, please, and the city that you're from, and then I'll hold the mic, and you can ask the candidate the question directly, please. First name and where you're from.
Dr. Peter Hill. I'm actually from Weston. I'm not from Waltham, neighboring town. My question is, first of all, thank you for willing to serve, but if you become representative on Beacon Hill, would you support a rebuttable presumption of shared parenting in the event of separation or divorce, so both the mother and the father can have an equal right to raise their children?
Jay, why don't you start?
Okay, you're talking about shared parenting? Was that the question?
Changing the custody laws.
So that both parents in cases of separation and divorce have an equal right to raise their kids if they are fit parents.
So what do you, I don't understand. If they're both fit, you want to have it 50-50, is that what you're saying?
As close to 50 as possible, yes.
I'd absolutely agree with that, absolutely.
I'll answer.
Gary?
I didn't expect that question, but I haven't seen the legislation, so I would like to look at it, but I practice family law, and I know the custody laws, and they're gender neutral, so I don't know exactly what you're trying to propose with the new law, but I'll say this. The alimony laws have to change, no doubt in my mind. The alimony laws right now are being applied inequitably. You have alimony for life when it shouldn't happen. It's a very difficult process to modify alimony. In some cases, you can't modify it, and somebody goes on and usually the husband goes on Social Security, and he's barely able to make ends meet. So I can at least I think it's probably.
Okay, wait a minute. You don't have a mic, so that they can't hear you, but it has to do with having it be presumed that all other things being equal, that there is shared custody between the father and the mother. And this would require a refining of our divorce laws. So that's what he wants to hear from you, whether that's something that you can support.
Yeah, I know I'm being a lawyer, I'd have to look at the legislation. I think it makes sense, except right now, like I said, the application of the custody laws, they might be applied inequitably by the judges, but they're gender neutral. So I'm not sure why you want to do the rebuttable presumption.
But you will look at it if you're elected.
Oh, absolutely.
John?
I would look at it absolutely. Any fit, able, and loving parent who both want to raise their children should have that equal right.
The other significant proposal to change our divorce laws does have to do with alimony, however, and the question of whether you favor ending an obligation to pay on the part of subsequent spouses. In other words, the person remarries and the new spouse now has his or her income counted in the alimony obligation.
I believe if they're living it with another union that is raising the child, if it is an unfair payment that is being subsidized by somebody else, it should be looked at fairly, and that we should amend our laws so that it's fair.
Gary, do you have a position on that?
Yeah, I think that's a good revision to the alimony laws. Right now, the new spouse, the second spouse, third spouse, whatever it may be, is his or her income is not counted to affect an alimony award, and generally it should be household income. Absolutely, if they're Not necessarily cohabitating, but if they're married, yes, then the income should be counted.
Jay, do you have an opinion on that?
I agree with what both parties said, and I agree wholeheartedly, and I would think that we would look at that if I would make it into the House of Representatives.
Charlie, do you have somebody else in the
Oh, yeah,
audience?
absolutely. If you could stand, say your name, please, what city you're from.
Yes, my name is Tara DeSisto, and I am a resident of Newton. I also was the student trustee at the University of Massachusetts, Boston, representing 15,000 students there. And I have two questions posed for you.
Let's do one.
I'll wrap it all up into one. The first one is a lot of graduates are now finding themselves underemployed or unemployed. A lot of that has to do with job outsourcing. And I wonder, first, how you would feel about taxing companies that outsource jobs. Second, Massachusetts voted overwhelmingly to decriminalize marijuana, and I wonder how you would feel about legalizing it and taxing it and regulating it under the same alcohol laws that we have. Thank you.
Okay, if you could combine those two, it would be difficult, but
Taxes on pot. Let's deal with that second one, because I'm sure there's a lot of interest in that. John, you want to start?
I would not support that. I would not support legalizing marijuana and taxing it. I think decriminalizing was one step, but I think that's far too much to do. And I think those laws, certainly they were a burden on our court system for not serious offenses, but to go to that step is wrong.
Gary?
Absolutely not. You're right. First of all, I'm not, as you can probably tell, I'm really not a tax guy. I don't like taxes.
Tell me who does.
Right. I mean, they're necessary, of course, but outsourcing doing the marijuana one, the marijuana, it's not a product that is in the stream of commerce. So it's not something, it's decriminalized, but it's not a product that we can tax. It's just, it's not even a recognized drug, unless you have a special prescription for it.
I think her question really went to the question, to the matter of legalization. And if you legalized it, then you could tax it, and therefore, is that something that you would...
Right. I don't believe in legalizing it either, so...
Okay. Jay?
I feel the same way as a police officer. I wasn't even for it being decriminalized, especially when you're looking at the young people in today's world. We should be educating a little bit further with what happens. The start of the process of drug abuse, perfect example, it starts with marijuana.
That's a gateway
abuse.
drug kind of
It's a gateway drug along with alcohol, and I would not support that at all.